The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. The sharp sting burned across my cheek as I stumbled backward, my hand instinctively flying to the red Maxwell blooming across my face. The Thanksgiving turkey sat forgotten on the table as 12 pairs of eyes stared at me, some shocked, others satisfied, all silent. My husband Maxwell stood over me, his hands still raised, chest heaving with rage. "Don't you ever embarrass me in front of my family again," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. His mother smirked from her chair. His brother chuckled under his breath. His sister rolled her eyes as if I deserved it. But then from the corner of the room came a voice so small yet so sharp it could cut through steel. "Daddy." Every head turned toward my 9-year-old daughter Emma, who stood by the window with her tablet clutched against her chest. Her dark eyes, so much like mine, held something that made the air in the room shift. Something that made Maxwell's confident sneer falter. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice steady and eerily calm for a child. "Because now Grandpa is going to see." The color drained from Maxwell's face. His family exchanged confused glances, but I saw something else creeping into their expressions. A flicker of fear they couldn't yet name. "What are you talking about?" Maxwell demanded, but his voice cracked. Emma tilted her head, studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. "I've been recording you, Daddy. Everything. For weeks. And I sent it all to Grandpa this morning." The silence that followed was deafening. Maxwell's family began to shift uncomfortably in their chairs, suddenly understanding that something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. "He said to tell you," Emma continued, her small voice carrying the weight of impending doom, "that he's on his way." And that's when they started to pale. That's when the begging began. 3 hours earlier I had been standing in the same kitchen, methodically basting the turkey while my hands shook with exhaustion. The bruise on my ribs from last week's lesson still ached with every movement, but I couldn't let it show. Not with Maxwell's family coming over. Not when any sign of weakness would be seen as ammunition. "Thelma, where the hell are my good shoes?" Maxwell's voice boomed from upstairs and I flinched despite myself. "In the closet, honey. Left side, bottom shelf," I called back, my voice carefully modulated to avoid triggering another explosion. Emma sat at the kitchen counter, supposedly doing homework, but I knew she was watching me. She always watched now, those intelligent eyes missing nothing. At 9 years old, she had learned to read the warning signs better than I had. The set of Maxwell's shoulders when he walked through the door, the particular way he cleared his throat before launching into a tirade, the dangerous quiet that preceded his worst moments. "Mom," she said softly, not looking up from her math worksheet. "Are you okay?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How many times had she asked me that? How many times had I lied and said yes, everything was fine, Daddy was just stressed. Adults sometimes disagreed, but it didn't mean anything. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I whispered, the lie bitter on my tongue. Emma's pencil stilled. "No, you're not." Before I could respond, Maxwell's heavy footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Thelma, the house looks like garbage. My mother is going to be here in an hour and you can't even." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw Emma watching him. For a brief moment, something that might have been shame flickered across his features. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Emma, go to your room," he said tersely. "But Dad, I'm doing homework like you." "Now." Emma gathered her books slowly, deliberately. As she passed by me, she squeezed my hand, a tiny gesture of solidarity that nearly broke my heart. At the kitchen doorway, she paused and looked back at Maxwell. "Be nice to Mom," she said simply. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. She's been cooking all day even though she's tired. So just, be nice." The audacity of a 9-year-old standing up to her father left Maxwell momentarily speechless. But I saw the dangerous flash in his eyes, the way his hands clenched into fists. "Emma, go," I said quickly, trying to defuse the situation. She nodded and disappeared upstairs, but not before I caught the determined set of her jaw, so much like my father's when he was preparing for battle. "That kid is getting too mouthy," Maxwell muttered, turning his attention back to me. "You're raising her to be disrespectful." "She's just protective," I said carefully. "She doesn't like seeing." "Seeing what?" His voice dropped to that dangerous whisper that made my blood run cold. "Are you telling her stories about us, Thelma?" "No, Maxwell. I would never." Because if you're poisoning my daughter against me, there will be consequences. His daughter. As if I had no claim to the child I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through every illness, held through every nightmare. The doorbell rang, saving me from having to respond. Maxwell straightened his tie and transformed instantly into the charming husband and son his family knew and loved. The switch was so seamless it was terrifying. "Showtime," he said with a cold smile. "Remember, we're the perfect family." Maxwell's family descended on our home like a swarm of well-dressed locusts, each carrying their own arsenal of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled insults. His mother, Jasmine, swept in first, her critical gaze immediately scanning the house for flaws. "Oh, Thelma dear," she said in that syrupy tone that dripped with condescension, "you've done something with the decorations. How rustic." I'd spent 3 days perfecting those decorations. Maxwell's brother Kevin arrived with his wife Melissa, both sporting designer clothes and superior smirks. "Smells good in here," Kevin said, then added under his breath, "for once." The real barb came from Maxwell's sister Florence, who made a show of hugging me while whispering, "You look tired, Thelma. Are you not sleeping well?" Maxwell always says stressed wives age faster. I forced a smile and nodded, playing my role in this twisted theater. But I noticed Emma standing in the doorway, her tablet in her hands, those sharp eyes cataloging every slight, every cruel comment, every moment her father failed to defend me. Throughout dinner the pattern continued. Maxwell basked in his family's attention while they systematically diminished me with surgical precision. "Thelma's always been so simple," Jasmine said while cutting her turkey. "Not much education, you know. Maxwell really married down, but he's such a good man for taking care of her." Maxwell didn't contradict her. He never did. "Remember when Thelma tried to go back to school?" Florence laughed. "What was it, nursing?" Maxwell had to put his foot down. Someone needed to focus on the family. That wasn't how it happened. I'd been accepted into a nursing program, had dreams of financial independence, of a career that mattered. Maxwell had sabotaged my application, told me I was too stupid to succeed, that I'd embarrass him by failing. But I said nothing. I smiled and refilled their wine glasses and pretended their words didn't slice through me like broken glass. Emma, however, had stopped eating entirely. She sat rigid in her chair, her small hands clenched in her lap, watching her father's family tear her mother apart piece by piece. The breaking point came when Kevin started talking about his wife's new promotion. "Melissa's making partner at her firm," he announced proudly. "Of course, she's always been the ambitious type. Not content to just exist." The word exist hung in the air like a slap. Even Melissa looked uncomfortable with her husband's cruelty. "That's wonderful," I said genuinely, because despite everything, I was happy for any woman succeeding in her career. "It is," Jasmine chimed in. "It's so refreshing to see a woman with actual drive and intelligence. Don't you think so, Maxwell?" Maxwell's eyes met mine across the table and I saw the calculation there. The choice between defending his wife or maintaining his family's approval. He chose them. He always chose them. "Absolutely," he said, raising his glass. "To strong, successful women." The toast wasn't for me. It was never for me. I excused myself to the kitchen, needing a moment to breathe, to collect the pieces of my dignity that lay scattered across the dining room floor. Through the doorway, I could hear them continuing their assault in my absence. "She's gotten so sensitive lately," Maxwell was saying. "Honestly, I don't know how much more drama I can take." "You're a saint for putting up with it," his mother replied. That's when Emma's voice cut through their laughter like a blade. "Why do you all hate my mom?" The dining room fell silent. "Emma, honey," Maxwell's voice was strained, "we don't hate." "Yes, you do," Emma interrupted, her voice steady and clear. "You say mean things about her. You make her sad. You make her cry when you think I'm not looking." I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, my heart hammering in my chest. "Sweetheart," Jasmine's voice was sickeningly sweet. "Sometimes adults have complicated." "My mom is the smartest person I know," Emma continued, gathering momentum. "She helps me with my homework every night. She builds things and fixes things and knows about science and books and everything. She's kind to everyone even when they're mean to her. Even when they don't deserve it." The silence stretched taut. She cooks your food and cleans your messes and smiles when you hurt her feelings because she's trying to make everyone happy. But none of you even see her. You just see someone to be mean to. Emma, that's enough. Maxwell's voice held a warning. No, Daddy. It's not enough. It's not enough that you make Mom sad. It's not enough that you yell at her and call her stupid. It's not enough that you hurt her. My blood turned to ice. She'd seen more than I thought. More than I'd ever wanted her to see. I heard a chair scrape back violently. Go to your room. Now. Maxwell's voice was deadly quiet. I don't want to. I said now. The sound of his palms striking the table made everyone jump. That's when I rushed back into the dining room, unable to let my daughter face his anger alone. Maxwell, please, I said, stepping between him and Emma. She's just a child. She doesn't understand. Doesn't understand what? His eyes were blazing now, his composure finally cracking in front of his family. Doesn't understand that her mother is a pathetic, weak. Don't call her that. Emma's voice rose, fierce and protective. Don't you dare call my mom names. I'll call her whatever I want. Maxwell roared, advancing on both of us. This is my house, my family, and You'll what? I found myself saying, my own breaking point finally reached. Hit a 9-year-old? In front of your family? Show them what you really are. The room went deadly silent. Maxwell's family stared at us, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Maxwell's face contorted with rage. How dare you, he whispered. How dare you make me look like what you are? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Like someone who hurts his wife. Like someone who terrorizes his own child. That's when his hand came up. That's when the world exploded into pain and humiliation and the crushing weight of public betrayal. And that's when Emma stepped forward and changed everything. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. 1 month earlier. Mom, can you help me with my school project? I looked up from the pile of bills I'd been sorting. Medical bills from the emergency room visit Maxwell's family didn't know about. The one where I'd told the doctors I'd fallen down the stairs. Emma stood in the doorway of my bedroom, her tablet in her hands and an expression I couldn't quite read on her face. Of course, sweetheart. What's the project about? Family dynamics, she said carefully. We have to document how families interact and communicate. Something in her tone made me uneasy. What do you mean, document? Take videos. Record conversations. Show examples of how family members treat each other. Her eyes met mine, dark and serious. Mrs. Andre says it's important to understand what healthy families look like versus other kinds. My heart clenched. Emma's teacher had always been perceptive, always asked the right questions when Emma came to school with shadows under her eyes or flinched when adults raised their voices. Emma, I began carefully, you know that some things that happen in families are private, right? Not everything needs to be shared or recorded. I know, she said, but there was something in her voice, a determination that reminded me so strongly of my father it took my breath away. But Mrs. Andre says documenting things can be important. For understanding. For protection. The word, protection, hung between us like a loaded weapon. That night, after Maxwell had screamed at me for buying the wrong brand of coffee and slammed the bedroom door so hard it shook the house, Emma appeared in my doorway. Mom, she whispered, are you okay? I was sitting on my bed, holding an ice pack to my shoulder where he'd grabbed me, leaving finger-shaped bruises that would be hidden under long sleeves tomorrow. I'm fine, baby, I lied automatically. Emma stepped into the room and closed the door softly behind her. Mom, I need to tell you something. Something in her voice made me look up. She seemed older suddenly, carrying a weight no child should bear. I've been thinking, she said, climbing onto the bed beside me. About my project. About families. Emma. I know Daddy hurts you, she said quietly, the words falling between us like stones into still water. I know you pretend he doesn't, but I know. My throat closed. Sweetheart, sometimes adults. Mrs. Andres showed us a video, Emma interrupted. About families where people get hurt. She said if we ever see anything like that we should tell someone. Someone who can help. Emma, you can't. I've been recording, Mom. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Emma's small hands trembled as she held up her tablet. I've been recording him when he's mean to you. When he yells and when he hurts you. I have videos, Mom. Lots of them. Horror and hope warred in my chest. Emma, you can't, if your father finds out. He won't, she said with frightening certainty. I'm careful. I'm really, really careful. She opened her tablet and showed me a folder labeled Family Project. Inside were dozens of video files, each one time-stamped and dated. Emma, this is dangerous. If he catches you. Mom, she said, her small hand covering mine, I won't let him hurt you anymore. I have a plan. The look in her eyes, ancient and determined and absolutely fearless, chilled me to the bone. What kind of plan? Emma was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the bedspread. Grandpa always said that bullies only understand one thing. My father. Of course. Emma adored my father, called him every week, listened with rapt attention to his stories about leadership and courage and standing up for what's right. He was a colonel in the army, a man who commanded respect and had never backed down from a fight in his life. Emma, you can't involve Grandpa. This is between your father and me. No, it's not, she said firmly. It's about our family. Our real family. And Grandpa always says family protects family. Over the next month, I watched my 9-year-old daughter become someone I barely recognized. She was still sweet, still my baby, but there was a steel in her spine that hadn't been there before. She moved through the house like a tiny soldier on a mission, documenting every cruel word, every raised hand, every moment Maxwell showed his true nature. She was careful, devastatingly careful. The tablet was always positioned innocuously, propped against books or hidden behind picture frames. She never filmed for long, just captured the worst moments and then stopped. Maxwell never suspected that his own daughter was building a case against him, piece by damning piece. I tried to stop her twice. The first time she simply said, Mom, someone has to protect us. The second time she showed me a video of Maxwell shoving me into the refrigerator so hard it left a dent in the door. Look at yourself, she said quietly. Look how small you make yourself. Look how scared you are. In the video I was indeed cowering, trying to make myself invisible as Maxwell towered over me, his face twisted with rage over something trivial. I'd forgotten to buy his specific brand of beer. This isn't love, Mom, Emma said with heartbreaking wisdom. Love doesn't look like this. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Emma made her first call to Grandpa. I only found out because I walked into her room to say goodnight and heard her small voice through the door. Grandpa, what would you do if someone was hurting Mom? My blood froze. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. What do you mean, sweetheart? My father's voice was gentle but alert, the way it got when he sensed trouble. Just, hypothetically, someone was being mean to her. Really mean. What would you do? There was a long pause. Emma, is your mom okay? Is someone bothering her? It's just a question, Grandpa. For my school project. Another pause. Well, hypothetically, anyone who hurt your mother would have to answer to me. You know that, right? Your mom is my daughter and I will always protect her. Always. Even if it was someone in our family? Especially then, my father's voice was steel. Family doesn't hurt family, Emma. Real family protects each other. Okay, Emma said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. That's what I thought. The next morning, Emma showed me a text message on her tablet. She'd sent my father a simple note, starting to worry about Mom. Can you help? His response was immediate. Always. Call me anytime. I love you both. He's ready, Emma said simply. Ready for what? Emma looked at me with those ancient eyes. To save us. The morning of Thanksgiving, Emma was unusually calm. While I rushed around making last-minute preparations, she sat at the breakfast table methodically eating her cereal and watching Maxwell with an intensity that should have been disturbing in a child. Maxwell was already on edge. His family's visits always brought out the worst in him. The need to appear in control, the pressure to maintain his image as the successful patriarch. He'd already snapped at me 3 times before 9 a.m., once for using the wrong serving spoons and twice for breathing too loudly. Remember, he said, straightening his tie in the hallway mirror, today we are the perfect family. Loving husband, devoted wife, well-behaved child. Can you manage that, Thelma? Yes, I whispered. And you, he turned to Emma, no more of that attitude you've been showing lately. Children should be seen and not heard when the adults are talking. Emma nodded solemnly. I understand, Daddy. Something about her easy compliance should have warned him, but Maxwell was too focused on his own performance to notice the calculating look in his daughter's eyes. His family arrived in waves, each member bringing their own special brand of toxicity. They settled into our living room like they owned it, immediately beginning their ritual of subtle humiliation. Thelma, dear, Jasmine said, accepting a glass of wine, you really should do something about these gray roots. Maxwell works so hard to provide, the least you could do is take care of yourself. Maxwell laughed. Actually laughed. Mom's right. I keep telling her she's letting herself go. I felt the familiar burn of shame, but when I glanced at Emma, I saw her small fingers moving across her tablet screen. I'm sure she was recording. The afternoon continued in much the same vein. Every time I entered a room, the conversation would shift to subtle digs about my appearance, my intelligence, my worth as a wife and mother. And every time Maxwell either joined in or remained silent, his complicity more devastating than outright cruelty. But Emma was documenting it all. During dinner, as Maxwell carved the turkey with theatrical precision, his family launched into their most vicious attack yet. You know, Kevin said, Melissa and I were just saying how lucky Maxwell is that you're so accommodating, Thelma. Some wives would make a fuss about, well, everything. What do you mean? I asked, though I knew I shouldn't have. Florence giggled. Oh, come on. The way you just take everything. Never fight back, never stand up for yourself. It's almost admirable how completely you've surrendered. She knows her place, Maxwell said, and the cruel satisfaction in his voice made something inside me finally snap. Pie place. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Thelma. Maxwell's voice held a warning. But I couldn't stop. 3 years of accumulated humiliation, of swallowed pride, of protecting my daughter from a truth that was destroying us both. It all came pouring out. My place is to cook your food and clean your messes and smile while your family tells me how worthless I am. My place is to disappear while you take credit for everything I do and blame me for everything that goes wrong. Maxwell's face went white, then red. Thelma, stop. Now. My place is to pretend I don't see Emma watching while you. That's when he stood up. That's when his hand came up. That's when everything changed forever. The slap echoed through the room like thunder. Time seemed to slow as I stumbled backward, my cheek burning, my vision blurring with tears of pain and shock. But it wasn't the physical pain that destroyed me. It was the look of satisfaction on his family's faces, the way they nodded as if I'd finally gotten what I deserved. Maxwell stood over me, breathing hard, his hand still raised. Don't you ever embarrass me in front of my family again, he snarled. The dining room was silent except for the sound of my ragged breathing and the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me, some shocked, others satisfied, all waiting to see what would happen next. That's when Emma stepped forward. Daddy. Her voice was so calm, so controlled that it sent chills down my spine. Maxwell turned toward her, his anger still blazing, ready to unleash his fury on anyone who dared challenge him. What? He snapped. Emma stood by the window, her tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. Her dark eyes, my eyes, were fixed on her father with an intensity that made the air in the room shift. You shouldn't have done that, she said, her voice steady and eerily calm for a child. Maxwell's anger faltered for just a moment, confusion flickering across his features. What are you talking about? Emma tilted her head, studying him with the cold assessment of a predator sizing up its prey. Because now Grandpa is going to see. The change in the room was immediate and electric. Maxwell's confident posture crumbled. His family exchanged confused glances, but I saw something else creeping into their expressions. A flicker of fear they couldn't yet name. What are you talking about? Maxwell demanded, but his voice cracked on the last word. Emma held up her tablet, the screen glowing in the dim dining room light. I've been recording you, Daddy. Everything. For weeks. Jasmine gasped. Kevin choked on his wine. Florence's fork clattered to her plate. But Emma wasn't finished. I recorded you calling Mom stupid. I recorded you shoving her. I recorded you throwing the remote at her head. I recorded you making her cry. Her voice never wavered, never lost that terrifying calm. And I sent it all to Grandpa this morning. Maxwell's face went through a series of colors, red to white to gray, as the implications hit him. My father wasn't just Emma's beloved grandfather. He was Colonel James Mitchell, a decorated military officer with connections throughout the base, the community, and the legal system. You little... Maxwell started toward Emma, his hand raised. You wouldn't, Emma said, not moving an inch. Because Grandpa said to tell you something. Maxwell froze mid-step. He said to tell you that he's reviewed all the evidence. He said to tell you that real men don't hurt women and children. He said to tell you that bullies who hide behind closed doors are cowards. The tablet chimed with an incoming message. Emma glanced at the screen and smiled. A smile that was all teeth and no warmth. And he said to tell you, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout, that he's on his way. The effect was immediate and devastating. Maxwell's family began talking at once, voices overlapping in panic. Maxwell, what is she talking about? You said they were just arguments. If there are videos. If the Colonel sees. We can't be associated with. Maxwell held up his hands trying to regain control, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped and his family was seeing him clearly for the first time. It's not what it sounds like, he said desperately. Emma's just a kid, she doesn't understand. I understand that you hit my mom, Emma said, her voice cutting through his excuses like a knife. I understand that you scare her. I understand that you make her feel small and worthless because it makes you feel big and important. She paused, looking around the room at Maxwell's family with withering disdain. And I understand that all of you knew and didn't care because it was easier to pretend Mom was the problem. Jasmine's face had gone ashen. Emma, surely you don't think we would support. You called her stupid. You called her worthless. You said Daddy married down. You said she was lucky he put up with her. Emma's voice was relentless, cataloging every cruelty with perfect recall. You made her smaller every time you came here. You helped him break her. The silence that followed was deafening. Maxwell was staring at his daughter as if seeing her for the first time, and what he saw clearly terrified him. This wasn't the quiet, obedient child he thought he knew. This was someone who had been watching, learning, planning. How long? He whispered. How long what, Daddy? How long have you been recording me? Emma consulted her tablet with clinical precision. 43 days. 17 hours and 36 minutes of footage. Audio recordings of another 28 incidents. The numbers hit the room like physical blows. Maxwell's brother Kevin was openly staring, his mouth hanging open. His wife Melissa had tears in her eyes. Jesus, Maxwell, Kevin breathed. What have you done? I haven't done anything. Maxwell exploded, his composure finally shattering completely. She's lying. She's a manipulative little. Emma calmly turned her tablet around, showing the screen to the room. On it, clear as day, was a video of Maxwell grabbing me by the throat and slamming me against the kitchen wall while screaming about dinner being 5 minutes late. This was Tuesday, Emma said conversationally. Would you like to see Wednesday? Or maybe Thursday when you threw the coffee mug at Mom's head? Maxwell lunged for the tablet, but Emma was ready. She darted behind my chair, her finger hovering over the screen. I wouldn't, she said calmly. This is all backed up. Cloud storage. Grandpa's phone. Mrs. Andres' email. The police station's tip line. Maxwell froze. The police. Grandpa insisted, Emma said matter-of-factly. He said documentation is important for when bad people need consequences. That's when we heard it, the rumble of engines in the driveway. Car doors slamming. Heavy footsteps on the front porch. Emma smiled. He's here. The front door didn't just open. It erupted inward as if blown apart by the force of righteous fury itself. My father filled the doorway like an avenging angel, his military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes. Behind him stood 2 other men I recognized from base functions. Both officers, both wearing expressions that could have melted steel. The dining room fell silent except for the sound of Jasmine's wine glass shattering on the floor. Colonel James Mitchell surveyed the room with the cold efficiency of a man who had commanded troops through war zones. His eyes took in everything. My red cheek, Maxwell's guilty posture, his family's stricken faces, and Emma standing protectively beside me with her tablet still clutched in her hands. "Colonel Mitchell," Maxwell stammered, his bravado evaporating like smoke. "This is unexpected. We weren't." "Sit down," my father said quietly. The command carried such authority that Maxwell actually took a step backward. But he didn't sit. "Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding." I said sit down. This time Maxwell's knees buckled and he collapsed into his chair. His family remained frozen, afraid to move or speak. My father stepped into the room, his companions flanking him like honor guards. "Emma," he said gently, his voice transforming completely when he addressed his granddaughter, "are you all right?" "Yes, Grandpa," she said, running to him. He scooped her up in one arm while keeping his lethal gaze fixed on Maxwell. "And your mother?" Emma's eyes flicked to my burning cheek. "She's hurt, Grandpa." Again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My father set Emma down carefully and approached me, his trained eyes cataloging every visible injury with clinical precision. When he gently touched my cheek, examining the handprint Maxwell had left there, his jaw clenched so tight I heard his teeth grind. "How long?" he asked quietly. "Dad." "How long, Thelma?" I couldn't lie to him. Not with Emma watching, not with the evidence displayed so clearly on my face. 3 years. The words hung in the air like an execution sentence. My father turned slowly to face Maxwell, and I had never seen him look more dangerous. Not in combat photos, not in his most intimidating military portraits. Nothing compared to the controlled fury radiating from him now. 3 years, he repeated, his voice conversational. 3 years you've been putting your hands on my daughter. "Sir, it's not what you think," Maxwell began. 3 years you've been terrorizing my granddaughter. I never touched Emma. I would never. You think because you didn't hit her you didn't hurt her?" My father's voice rose slightly and Maxwell actually whimpered. "You think a child can watch her mother being abused and not be damaged? You think what you've done to this family isn't a crime against that little girl?" Maxwell's mother finally found her voice. "Colonel Mitchell, surely we can discuss this civilized adults." My father's gaze shifted to her and she immediately fell silent. "Mrs. Whitman," he said politely, "your son has been physically and emotionally abusing my daughter while you sat in this very room and called her worthless. Your entire family has enabled and encouraged his behavior. You are complicit in every bruise, every tear, every night my granddaughter went to bed afraid." Jasmine's face crumpled. "We didn't know." "You knew," Emma said quietly from beside me. "You all knew. You just didn't care because it wasn't happening to you." One of my father's companions, a man I recognized as Major Reynolds, stepped forward and placed a tablet on the dining table. "We've reviewed all the evidence," he said formally. "Video documentation of domestic violence. Audio recordings of threats and verbal abuse. Photographic evidence of injuries. Medical records showing repeated accidents." Maxwell's face had gone completely white. "Those are private medical records. You can't." "Your wife signed releases for everything," Major Reynolds continued calmly. "Retroactively dating back 3 years. She has the right to share her own medical information, especially when it documents crimes against her." "Crimes." Maxwell's voice cracked. My father stepped closer to Maxwell's chair, his presence overwhelming. "Assault and battery. Domestic violence. Terroristic threatening. Harassment. Intimidation of witnesses." "Witnesses?" Maxwell looked confused. "Your daughter. Your wife. Anyone who saw the bruises and injuries you caused." My father's voice was clinical now, methodical. "Emma's teacher reported her concerns to Child Protective Services last month. There's already an open file." The room was spinning. I had no idea Emma's teacher had taken it that far, had no idea there were official records, formal complaints. "The question," my father continued, "is what happens next?" Maxwell's family was exchanging panicked glances, finally understanding the magnitude of the situation they'd helped create. "What do you want?" Maxwell whispered, and the desperation in his voice was almost pathetic. My father smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "What I want is to take you outside and show you exactly what it feels like to be helpless and afraid. What I want is to make you understand the terror you've put my family through." Maxwell shrank deeper into his chair. "But what I'm going to do," my father continued, is let the law handle you. Because unlike you, I believe in justice, not revenge. He nodded to his other companion, who I now recognized as Captain Torres from the base legal office. She stepped forward with a folder in her hands. Mr. Whitman, she said formally, I'm here to serve you with a temporary restraining order. You are ordered to have no contact with your wife or daughter. You are ordered to vacate this residence immediately. This is my house. Maxwell exploded, desperation making him stupid. Actually, Captain Torres consulted her papers, the house is in both your names, but given the circumstances and the evidence of domestic violence, your wife has been granted temporary exclusive occupancy. Maxwell turned to his family looking for support, but found only horrified faces turned away from him. Mom, he pleaded, you can't believe. I've seen the videos, Maxwell, Jasmine said quietly, tears streaming down her face. We all have. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Kevin stood up slowly, his face gray. Melissa and I need to leave. We can't be associated with this. You're my family. Maxwell shouted, his voice breaking. No, Florence said, standing as well. Family doesn't do what you've done. Family protects each other. As Maxwell's relatives filed out of the house like mourners leaving a funeral, my father turned his attention to Emma and me. Pack a bag, he said gently. Both of you. You're coming home with me tonight. But this is our home, I protested weakly. This was your prison, Emma said with startling clarity. Grandpa's house is home. Maxwell was still sitting at the table, staring at the wreckage of his life. Thelma, he said desperately, please. I can change. I can get help. Don't destroy our family over. Over what? I found my voice finally, the words coming stronger than they had in years. Over you hitting me? Over you terrorizing our daughter? Over 3 years of making us afraid to breathe wrong. It wasn't that bad. Daddy, Emma interrupted, her voice sad now instead of angry. I have 43 days of recordings that say it was exactly that bad. Maxwell looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and seemed to finally understand what he had lost. Not just a wife, not just a house, but the respect and love of the one person who should have looked up to him most. Emma, I'm your father, he said brokenly. No, she said with devastating finality. Fathers protect their families. Fathers make their children feel safe. You're just the man who used to live here. 6 months later, Emma and I sat in our new apartment. Small but bright, with windows that let in actual sunlight and doors that we could lock without fear of who might come through them. The restraining order had held. Maxwell had been convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to 2 years in prison, followed by mandatory anger management and supervised visitation with Emma. Emma hadn't asked to see him yet. The divorce had been swift and decisive. Maxwell's family, horrified by the public nature of his crimes and terrified of their own legal exposure, had pressured him not to contest anything. I got the house, which I immediately sold. I got half of everything plus substantial support payments. More importantly, I got my life back. Mom, Emma said from her spot on the couch where she was doing homework. Mrs. Andres wants to know if you'll speak to her class about resilience. I looked up from my nursing textbooks. Yes, I was finally pursuing that degree Maxwell had convinced me I was too stupid to earn. What would I say? Emma considered this seriously. Maybe that being strong doesn't mean staying quiet. Maybe that protecting someone sometimes means being brave enough to ask for help. My 9-year-old daughter, who had orchestrated the downfall of a grown man through pure strategic thinking and unwavering determination, was giving me advice about courage. What about you? I asked. Are you okay with everything that happened? Emma set down her pencil and looked at me with those ancient eyes that had seen too much but somehow remained clear and hopeful. Mom, do you remember what you used to say when I had nightmares? You tell me that brave people aren't the ones who aren't scared. Brave people are the ones who are scared but do the right thing anyway. I nodded, remembering countless nights when I'd whispered those words while she trembled in my arms after hearing us fight. You were brave, she said simply. You stayed to protect me even when staying hurt you. And I was brave because I knew I had to protect you. We protected each other. Tears blurred my vision. I should have left sooner. I should have. Mom, Emma interrupted gently, you left when you were ready. You left when it was safe. You left when you knew we'd be okay. She was right, of course. My brilliant, remarkable daughter was right. The truth was I hadn't left. We had escaped. And we had escaped because a 9-year-old girl had been braver and smarter and more strategic than any adult in the situation. She had seen what needed to happen and made it happen, methodically and carefully and with devastating effectiveness. Do you miss him? I asked quietly. Your father. Emma was quiet for a long moment. But I don't miss being afraid all the time. I don't miss watching you get smaller and sadder every day. I don't miss him at all, he is mean. She paused, then added, but I like who you are now. You're getting bigger again. He was right about that too. I was getting bigger, stronger, louder. I laughed more. I slept better. I had opinions again, dreams again, hopes for the future again. Mom. Emma's voice was small now, vulnerable in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think other kids have to do what I did? Record their parents and make plans and all of that? The question broke my heart. I hope not, baby. I really hope not. But if they do, she said, her voice growing stronger, I want them to know they can. That they're not tattling or being bad. That sometimes kids have to save their families because the adults can't. I set aside my textbooks and pulled her into my arms, this child who had saved us both. You know what, Emma? What? I think you might be the bravest person I've ever known. She snuggled against me, and for a moment she was just my little girl again, not the strategic mastermind who had brought down her abuser with military precision. I learned it from Grandpa, she said. And from you. You just forgot for a while. Outside our apartment windows, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Tomorrow I had classes and Emma had school, and we both had therapy appointments where we continued to process everything that had happened. But tonight we were safe. We were free. We were home. And Maxwell? Maxwell was exactly where he belonged, paying the consequences for his choices, stripped of his power, his family, and his victims. Sometimes justice looks like a 9-year-old girl with a tablet and a plan. Sometimes revenge is just letting the truth speak for itself. 3 years later. Emma's now 12. I still have all the videos. Mom thinks I deleted them after the trial, but I didn't. They're stored in 3 different places now, encrypted and password protected. Mrs. Andres, who's now Principal Andres, taught me about digital security and evidence preservation. She says I have good instincts for justice. Mom graduated nursing school last year. She works in the emergency room now, helping other people who come in with accidents and falls. She's good at seeing the signs, good at asking the right questions, good at helping people find their courage. She tells them about a little girl who saved her family with an iPad and a lot of patience. Grandpa says I have the makings of a good soldier. He's teaching me about leadership and strategy and standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. Maxwell, I don't call him Dad anymore, and he knows better than to ask me to, gets out of prison next year. He writes me letters sometimes asking for forgiveness, asking for a chance to be a father again. I don't write back. Mom says I might change my mind when I'm older, when I have more perspective. Maybe she's right. But right now I remember everything. I remember being 9 years old and watching my mother shrink a little more each day. I remember making a choice to save us both. And I remember that bullies only understand consequences. He had 3 years to learn what consequences feel like. Whether that's enough time for him to become a better person, well, that's up to him. But he'll never get the chance to hurt us again. I made sure of that. Sometimes at school, kids ask me about what happened. The story made the local news for a while. 9-year-old documents father's abuse, leads to conviction. Most kids think it's cool that I helped catch a bad guy. Some kids ask me if I feel bad about getting my dad in trouble. I tell them I didn't get him in trouble. He got himself in trouble by making bad choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. Mrs. Andres says that's a very mature way to think about it. Mom says that's a very you way to think about it. Grandpa says that's a very Mitchell way to think about it. Mitchells protect their own and they don't back down from bullies. I think they're all right. Last week, a girl in my class told me her stepdad hits her mom. She asked me what she should do. I gave her my old tablet, the one with the good camera, and taught her how to use the recording app. Just remember, I told her, you're not tattling. You're gathering evidence. And evidence is power. She nodded very seriously, the way I probably looked when I was 9 and making my own plans. Will you help me? She asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. But you have to be very, very careful. Because that's what we do. That's what our family does. We protect each other and we protect people who need protecting. And bullies? Bullies learn that the Mitchell family doesn't forget, and we don't forgive people who hurt the ones we love. We just make sure they face consequences.